Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Friday. It means we're brought to you by Corks, Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Jacob Beck, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. Fired up, you're here with us for the next couple of hours. If you're here in Baton Rouge and listening to us live right now, hope you're staying dry and safe. It's a wet afternoon here, but the weekend is just about upon us. We'll get you to the finish line here on 104.5 ESPN. 15 minutes from now, Preston Guy, his normal spot, tigerbait.com. We are closing in on football. LSU just 6 days away from breaking fall camp. We'll talk to Preston about that at 1:15. Donald Trump has issued an executive order. Let's get into what that may mean for college football. I've got some thoughts. I did a lot of reading on that this morning, candidly, because I got to read a lot about that stuff before I get on the air and talk about it. We did that. LSU wide receivers will be a topic of conversation in the second hour. I wrote a piece on that on LouisianaSports.net today. I'm very excited for Keith Hornsby, former LSU Tiger shooting guard, who had a nice professional career, most of which was overseas. Was back in Baton Rouge working as a coach with the LSU basketball program. Just talked to Keith, so we'll chat with him coming up at 2:30 there off the practice floor. So excited to get to chat with him. Been a while since we talked to Keith, so we'll do that at 2:30. Let's crank things up the way we do every single day with our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
So right now, the buzz with the New Orleans Saints is very clearly on training camp. It's the quarterbacks. You saw Spencer Rattler take the first team reps back on Wednesday. You saw Tyler Shook take them on Thursday. Today, Jay Kaner in some walkthrough periods work with the first team. And you're getting reports on completion percentages and arm strength. And then you're hearing press conferences. And you're getting a lot of information on the quarterback position. That's the biggest story in camp. And you've certainly got stories on Kellen Moore and how he's handling things and a brand new defense with Brandon Staley. And that's the buzz here. But there is a part of training camp that also revolves around roster building. Like, you've got to put together a roster. And a lot of that obviously comes from the group that you brought to camp with your rostered players and your draft picks and your undrafted free agents and all that. And then there's a part of it that is still veteran free agents that are in play at this time of year. And those are prevalent every single year. And the Saints are kicking tires. They do have some money to spend. That's a rarity. When usually, if you're talking about adding a free agent at this point with New Orleans Saints, you're having to move money around and figure something out like that. That's not the case this time around. There is some money left over in the coffers that the Saints can dole out if they find a fit. And y'all know by this point, y'all know how I feel about contracts in Saints land at this point, okay? I don't want long-term deals for older players. I want young players. I want cheap players. But I'm also okay with short-term deals. And I'm realizing that right now, your job is to make life as palatable and quote-unquote easy as possible for Spencer Rattler and what I believe to be the starter in Tyler Shough. So, does it make sense with those parameters in place? Those are always the parameters. Does it make sense to bring in Noah Fant? Well, the Saints have certainly brought him in on a visit. They've kind of showed him and made their pitch. He's been in New Orleans. And I believe it does make sense on the right deal to bring in Noah Fant. Now, here is what Noah Fant is. He's Juwan Johnson. That's exactly what Noah Fant is. It is shocking for me to show the statistics and the measurables and the age of these two players. Noah Fant is 28. Juwan Johnson is 29. They're months apart. Noah Fant is 6'4". Juwan Johnson is 6'4". Noah Fant weighs 249. Juwan Johnson weighs 231. So he's 20 pounds heavier, but you get the point. Same type of frame and height. Basically the same age. In the last 3 seasons, Noah Fant has 1,400 receiving yards. Juwan Johnson has 1,424. They are separated by 24 yards over 3 seasons of football. Fans have been in Seattle. Johnson's obviously in New Orleans. Noah Fant's got 130 catches in 3 years. Juwan Johnson has 129. They're separated by 1 catch and 24 yards in 3 years. They're the same height. They're months apart. They're basically the same guy. The big differentiator, and this is more based on chance, I would suggest, than actual production, Juwan Johnson's got 14 touchdown catches over the last 3 years, and Noah Fant has 5. But they're catching the same amount of balls. They're catching them for the same amount of yards. They're the same age. They're the same height. They're basically the same. So why would you need the same guy? If you already have Juwan Johnson, why would you need to bring in Noah Fant? Well, that's pretty simple. Because Taysom Hill's not ready to play, and who knows what he will be when he is ready to play. And Foster Moreau joins him on the PUP list, and he can't play either. So you've basically got Juwan Johnson and then a cast of characters. Yes, you used a 7th-round pick, but you don't have anybody else that you can point to go, that's a pro-ready, proven tight end that I know I can plug in. So you may need to get one of those. If you had Foster Moreau, I would go, I don't know that Noah Fant makes a lot of sense. Go get a big-bodied wide receiver. That's what you need. You need somebody on the perimeter that's big and physical and creates a shield with his body and can make tough catches over the middle and be a big third down resource and all those things. That's, to me, a bigger need than tight end. But this basically kind of serves the same purpose. And so I'm for it. What's better? Well, I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of things that are better for a young quarterback than a second-team tight end. But tight ends, I'll rephrase, tight ends are very, very helpful to young quarterbacks because tight ends create easy throws. It's awesome to have Rashid Shaheed and his blazing speed, but sometimes to get him the ball, you're going to have to make a throw. You're going to make a 55-yard down-the-field throw to hit him and make a big play. It's awesome to have Chris Olave, but he might be in tight windows. He's not the biggest guy. He works in tight quarters. He's quick and he's agile, and you might have to thread the needle to get him the ball. Tight ends are generally not much more than 10 or 12 yards down the field. They're not moving all that fast, and they sit down in soft spots in defenses and create pitch and catch throws. That is a great thing to have for a young quarterback. So I've long said that Juwan Johnson's a little bit limited in what he can be, but that's in relation to his contract, which is $10 million a year, and it's multiple years. That I didn't need. But if you can get Noah Fant on a 1-year deal for 2.5 or whatever the market dictates, he's certainly made significantly more than that the last 3 years, but he got cut. So I don't think he's going to break the bank here as a guy who just got released. So to me, if the Saints can find a manageable 1-year deal, yes, absolutely. Bigger frame, 250 pounds, been productive, been durable. Last year only played 14 games, but the years before that, 17, 17, 16, 15, 16. He's been on the field. He's a pro. He's been pretty productive. He gives you some depth at a spot where you don't have a lot of depth because of injury. And he makes things easier on your quarterback. You're checking just about every box I need checked here. I would prefer a 6'5" wide receiver with a little bit more athleticism. Those are a little tougher to find, and they're more expensive. But there's a need here that the Saints have created based on their roster management, and I think Fant does fit that. So if I were the Saints and I could work out a manageable deal, and I don't know what the market, he's visited multiple teams, I don't know what the market's going to suggest for Noah Fant. That's beyond my purview. And if they bring him in on a deal that I don't like, I'll tell you. If it's, and if it's a 1-year deal, I don't really care. A 1-year deal, there's very little the Saints could do where I would go, that's really dumb. Because I don't think this team's going to be great. I don't think they're going to be in a position to add a little bit later. I don't think they're going to be in contention to win the division or the conference. So a 1-year deal, this is not a year I'm concerned with the salary cap anyway. You get to 2 years and certainly 3 years, then all of a sudden I pull the reins back, and that's where we are with Juwan Johnson. I don't think they'll do that with Fant with the understanding that Juwan Johnson's already here. So I have very little fear that the Saints are going to botch this in any way. I think it can only help if you do it on the right terms. Now, does Fant want to come here and play for a team that may not be very good behind a guy that has the same skill set as him, that's a Fant call. That's going to probably come down to dollars and cents. And if you're talking about a guy who got cut, who can't command very much, who's going to be on the veteran minimum, at least in this spot, he should get an opportunity to play. And the best way to make more money is to play well. So maybe that's his quickest route to the field, to the bank. But I'm all for it. I think it's a great fit for the Saints. They can make it work. It's not a rush, and I don't think Fant's in a hurry. Talking about a guy who's played 6 years in the NFL, I don't think he's in just a dead sprint to get out there in the 98-degree heat and go through training camp. If you can take 7 extra days before you sign that contract, might be a good deal to kind of work out on your own and not necessarily get into the throes of camp. That's a veteran move, and I'm okay with that too. Work smarter, not always harder. So that's my 2 cents on the Saints with Noah Fant. That's our Genesis opening drive here on this Friday. We're brought to you by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Get on by for a late lunch. Crispy fried catfish, jumbo, and I mean jumbo, Gulf shrimp, their recipe, formed right here in the seafood capital of the world, South Louisiana. It is phenomenal stuff. If you're one of those folks, and I understand this, that thinks, I'm from South Louisiana, I'm not going to go through a drive-through for my seafood. I understand where you're coming from. Just try Cork's once. I promise you will be impressed with the quality of the product. It's great. They got great po' boys. They can feed a ton of people for a party or, for a feed the office. And certainly if you're trying to zip by for dinner tonight on the way home, want to just grab something quick and easy, Cork's is just that. Check out the menu, corksfishandshrimp.com. They bring you our Friday shows each and every week. We'll come back with Preston Guy from TigerBait.com talking LSU football next.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp.
To former Tiger great Keith Hornsby at the bottom of hour number 2. That'll come up at 2:30. Just had an LSU baseball player involved in a trade deadline deal. Griffin Herring, who was the Yankees draft selection last year, headed to Colorado as part of a trade deadline deal. So talk a little bit about that at the end of the hour as well. Donald Trump signed an executive order yesterday that impacts college football, college sports as a whole. We'll do that in 15 minutes. Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. Good enough to join us here on Fridays. Last one in the offseason. Next time we talk to Preston, LSU will have a practice in the rearview mirror. Got to the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Now, Preston, how we doing?
All right, how's it going? Hope you're staying drier today than I am.
Yeah, the studio does pretty well keeping the rain out and sun and any weather at all, because it's just a hole where we don't get any of that through windows or otherwise. So yeah, we're dry, and we'll talk a little bit of football here with you. I'm curious, now that we are inside a week, like what's your feeling? What are you excited to go see next week?
Man, I am looking forward to seeing just the unit, the personnel that they're rolling out there, particularly on the offensive line where they're replacing 4 starters. I think fans are probably almost a little tired of hearing about that, but I think that's going to be the key for this team. I like most of the units on this team. I'm a little concerned about the offensive line and certainly how they looked in spring, and I'm hoping to see, sometimes units come into the season as a massive concern, and they end up being okay or good. Look at defensive tackle last year. Every one of us was circling that as the biggest problem, and it ended up being fine.
So as far as the line goes, do you feel like Chester's going to start?
Somewhere. Whether he starts at center or Braylon Moore starts at center and he punches out the guard, we'll see. I think he'll do better at guard. I expect that's probably going to be the move. Of course, they didn't make that move in spring. Braylon Moore stayed second team the whole time, but I have a strong feeling that coaches are wanting to keep, not play all their cards too early, with all these portal windows open. It's easy to get a few guys upset and have them, I'm not going to start this year. I'm hitting the portal. So maybe it's better to keep those decisions, with a short list of people knowing it before we re-roll it out to the whole team.
So I'm of the opinion that the offensive line is going to take a step back this year. I think how far back that step is dictates how good the offense ultimately is. Do you see it a different way?
Well, let's put it like this. Last year's offensive line was very good elite pass blockers.
Yeah.
They got 4 guys drafted. But running the ball, they were pretty subpar in their run blocking. So what I'm hoping for is I don't think it's a realistic expectation that you're going to have a Will Campbell out there again this year. But I'm hoping it's more of a balanced unit where they're maybe a little bit better at run blocking, but maybe the pass blocking isn't quite as elite. And that kind of evens out. And I'm hoping that other units step up to kind of pick up the slack. I mean, a lot of your offensive line, you can help out your offensive line in not giving up sacks by having receivers that are getting the ball, getting open way quicker. That tends to help. A lot of times running backs being able to find a tighter hole, that can help out. So that's kind of where I look at it is, I don't think overall they're going to be as good as they were a year ago, although football's funny and things happen. But I'm hoping it's more of a balanced unit, and I'm hoping the talent around them can kind of pull the slack.
So Brian Kelly has said a couple times, whether it's at Media Days, Rotary Club, or wherever, that they didn't do anything with the depth chart in the spring. That was about development. But he wants to settle on that quickly, and that's kind of part of the we got to be better in the opener type deal. Like, we need to know who our guys are pretty quick and then go to practice. Do you feel like they can have an offensive line set after a week and a half?
I don't see any reason why they shouldn't. They've been looking at spring practice with all these guys for how many months. They probably know who their starters are right now. Maybe a spot or two, but I don't think it's going to be the starters that we saw in the actual spring game, and exactly what Brian Kelly was telling you. I think they made the cohesive staff decision that we're not going to determine a starting lineup for spring. And that what goes hand in hand with that is they chose not to do an official spring game. They did an open spring practice, and then guess what? They had 2 more practices after that. The whole point of the way they were doing everything is just, we're just going to practice football. We're not determining position battles yet. But you can't tell me the coaches aren't sitting there evaluating their guys and have some decisions made already.
So how do you feel about Tyree Adams?
Well, I think that's probably your one guy you're looking at here who you're feeling really comfortable about his spot. But if I had to bet on one guy keeping his spot, it's probably Tyree Adams there at left tackle. He just got the build of a left tackle. I think of the guys out there, particularly the guys stepping up and who weren't starters. Obviously, DJ Chester's the only one who does return, and you don't have much confidence. I think you have the most confidence in him.
They threw for 300 and change and 3 touchdowns in the bowl game without a sack given up. I mean, does that give you confidence that even though the only guy that played off that offensive line was Frazier and he was playing tackle, that maybe that there's some real talent there and some real potential?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that does. But I think Baylor also had a bit of a skeleton crew they were rolling out there. I don't think they were working with a full shop of defensive linemen out there. But, yes, against any Division I team to go out there and look that good, that's encouraging. However, I think we all know that with this schedule and this, particularly your first game, the defensive line at Clemson is going to be the nastiest, possibly nastiest in the country, but I believe the nastiest on your schedule this year. You're not looking to just do what you did against teams like Baylor. You need them to step up and play against the best defensive linemen in the country because, look, hey, South Carolina, talk about a really good defensive line. They've got a really good one, too. So, I mean, you're going to have to go out there and be good enough to stop the best in the country. That's kind of the bar that you have to have with this offensive line. And in my opinion, I don't think they're necessarily going to be good enough to just go up there and one-on-one and man up and go out there and say you're going to get 0 sacks today, okay? You're going to have to scheme around it. You're going to have to do some things to get them off kilter. You're going to have to call, some screens. You're going to have to make some things happen to where the defensive linemen can't just go white knuckles, leaning straight forward and launching themselves out there and be effective enough in the running game to where you can, actually keep them honest out there. I think you have to use your scheme to supplement them this year.
You're talking, and it's just the bells and whistles are going off in my head. Florida State 3 years ago, where you were facing Jared Verse, Fiske, like those guys that were just, and LSU just couldn't block them. And it took them until 2 weeks later to get Emory Jones in the lineup and shake things around. And you change your center and move Dellinger off and put Turner in. And by the time they got to November, like they had a pretty good offensive line, but they weren't any good the first game. And that's the nightmare scenario for this year, right?
I mean, absolutely, it's the nightmare scenario. Now, if your team with this much continuity looks as disorganized as LSU looked 3 years ago against Florida State, you have to ask some serious questions about Brian Kelly about why he can't get his team ready to line up for an opener. I mean, it's more than a weakness of the coach at that point. It's like, this has been your fourth year, man. I mean, you've got both your coordinators returning. You lost one coach this offseason. You brought, your quarterback is coming back, and his number one receiver is back. What is going on here? Why does your team look good? Yeah, you lost 4 offensive linemen. Everybody's losing players around the country. So, yes, let's hope the conversation is not anywhere near similar. I'm not saying LSU can't lose the game and be all right, because Clemson is going to get, a lot of people are hyping them up as high as the number one team in the country. They might be a very good football team, and that's okay. I'm not guaranteeing that. But your team should not look as disorganized and in disarray as you did in 2022 when you've got an entirely new coaching staff and an entirely new roster all learning how to play and coach together.
Agreed. Last one on the offensive line, Carius Kern. Your thoughts on his season as a freshman? Do you think he breaks in at some point, or just a real talent that's going to be a depth piece and a future star?
I'll throw another one out there who's in the same category as Carius Kern there, man. It's Solomon Thomas. You got 2 5-star interior offensive linemen, and you're just sitting there. You're wondering, are one of them going to have their Will Campbell moment where you've got veteran guys you're expecting to go out there? I don't know if you remember this, but Hunt, do you remember who we just had just penned in and dried ink at left tackle going into that 2022 season? It was Miles Frazier. We all were doomed to determine it was going to be Miles Frazier at left tackle. That's a no-brainer. Well, that true freshman came out and said, "Nah, that's me." So, look, because we have no idea who this actual starting 5 is going to be for this offensive line, yeah, both those guys have an opportunity to slide in and steal a starting spot if they're developed enough, if they're polished enough, because there's not multi-year veteran starters out there. And the one multi-year veteran starter you are bringing back, he had a shaky year last year, albeit as a younger player. But, I mean, essentially, yeah, any one of them could go out there and snag a starting spot, and they're both talented enough to do it. I just wonder, it's very tough for a true freshman on an offensive line to come in because you just got to have years in that weight room, man. I mean, it is very difficult to be strong enough and developed enough with your technique to stand up against veteran SEC linemen as a true freshman. So, but you've got 2 candidates to do it, 2 very talented guys who if you were going to say this is the rare exception, I could believe you.
If this offensive line struggles a little bit in pass pro, especially at tackle, does that hurt Trey'Dez Green's ability to get on the field if you've got to go with Sharp or even Donovan Green to block as a tight end?
I mean, absolutely it does, but it turns Trey'Dez Green into a situational player. Yeah. If you need to get it, and more importantly, if Trey'Dez Green doesn't develop as a blocker, he's probably set to be a situational player anyways. First off, Bauer Sharp is a good player, and he's a complete tight end that they feel they can use him as a receiver and a blocker, okay? Trey'Dez Green, elite receiver, great goal line threat, but if he doesn't bulk up a little bit and he's capable of making, decent blocks, particularly to supplement a new pair of offensive tackles, yeah, I mean, he's going to be a situational player, and you might see him get some play in certain scenarios, but you're not going to see him out there on every single down, and it will take away from it. It'd be great to have a weapon like him that's just a vertical mismatch on any linebacker, or it would be great, but you might have to go with the proven blocker to supplement them if they aren't good enough. Now, if they turn out to be studs, man, I would really like to see you use Trey'Dez Green on every play because he's so good in the receiving game.
No question about it. He equaled Mason Taylor's season-long touchdown catches in one bowl game. So he's a pretty talented dude. We'll see. We'll see you out there next week, Preston. Appreciate it.
All right, Hunt. See you soon.
Preston Guy, TigerBait.com. It's football season. If you want your info, your coverage, TigerBait always does an awesome job. Preston, good enough to give us some time here on this Friday. That's not something I thought of, but as you have these conversations on the air, your mind's going and you're thinking about where to go with the conversation next based on answers. And that's just something that popped into my head is if they're struggling at tackle and you need some help blocking, which happens all the time, like Trey'Dez Green can't really do that. Like I don't think in Trey'Dez Green's time here at LSU, he's going to become some elite blocker. He's just not built that way. He's, as I've talked about many times, he's a willing blocker. He wants to try, but he's got these long, skinny arms, relatively speaking, and he's less physical than he is freakishly athletic. So it's just, you're going to have to put Bauer Sharp out there. You may have to put Donovan Green out there, who's been a quality blocker at Texas A&M and is big and well over 250 pounds, and he can do some of that. And that limits you offensively when you take Trey'Dez Green off the field. When you do that, you are taking one of your advantages off the field to counter one of the other advantages on the defense, which is rushing the passer against your tackles who aren't holding up. So it's just how everything works together. It's interesting that the offensive line is just so far and away the key to this season for LSU. For me, I don't even know what second is, but it's not that close. Because if they can hold up up front, they're going to win a ton of games. If they can't, they are compromised in a big way, and they're not going to win a ton of games. It's a massive, massive swinging point for this LSU team. So I appreciate Preston giving us a little bit of time. All right, Donald Trump issued an executive order yesterday. What does it mean for collegiate athletics? I'll tell you my thoughts next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every car that is on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Invite you to go to the online site and check out the inventory. I was there at Genesis yesterday. They said most buying processes start online. But I also highly suggest you go by and visit the team at Airline and PQ and just see for yourself with your own eyes what this line of vehicles looks and feels like. The GV80 and the GV80 Coupe are their best sellers. They're the midsize SUVs. The GV80 is a little bit more full-size. The 80 Coupe is a little bit sportier. But they're just fine vehicles. I got behind the wheel of one of the GV80s yesterday, and it's just awesome. I've driven smaller SUVs my entire life, and to get behind the wheel of one of those, it's so comfortable. It's got every feature you can want, and as I tell you all the time, one of the safest cars on the road. And listen to the warranties that you're going to get if you purchase a new Genesis. 5 years, 60,000 miles, bumper to bumper. Bumper to bumper, 5 years, 60,000 miles. And then you've got your 10-year, 100,000 mile powertrain warranty that is industry leading. Just part of the perks of being a Genesis driver. Roadside assistant comes with all of them. So be a Genesis driver. Go by and see them. Airline at PQ. You can start that process, as I said, at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Friday show is brought to you by Corks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp. LSU baseball Tiger just pinned a goodbye note to the program. We'll talk about it coming up in 15 minutes. Donald Trump signed an executive order yesterday concerning collegiate athletics. I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds. We're going to do a surface level here. I read a lot about it this morning, and certainly don't feel like I have like a perfect understanding of every single bit of the entirety of this order. But I do feel like I understand what's pertinent and have my thoughts on that as a whole. The general sentiment from athletic directors, conference commissioners, is that this is a big positive. The general sentiment from people who I'm reading up from attorneys is that, one, it won't pass because the Democrats are not going to pass it in the Senate, and two, it would probably be subject to significant amount of litigation if it were passed because attorneys don't find that it's constitutional. So what it says in the nuts and bolts of the biggest piece of it, and this is certainly not all of it, but the biggest piece of it is that they're eliminating third-party pay-per-play activity in collegiate athletics. They're trying to eliminate big boosters cutting checks for nothing so athletes will play. There needs to be some sort of perceived value in the endorsement of a company for the money to go to the student athlete. Like, this certainly would allow folks to go on, post on Instagram, get millions of views and receive payment from a company for something like that. It certainly would allow for an LSU baseball player to give batting lessons for $100 an hour. It certainly allows for things like that appear to be on the up and up and fair, quote unquote, market value. It wants to stop the process of the oil tycoon paying $6 million to a player who never endorses the oil company in any way. They're just getting paid to go play sports. And the powers that be in collegiate athletics are like, heck yeah, let's calm this thing down. We'll share our revenue. You can post on Instagram, but we don't need millions and millions changing hands to these student athletes who then jump in the transfer portal and we can't keep them here and then they go somewhere else. They're going, yes, do that, because that serves their interest. And that's why they're for it. And Donald Trump signs that into quote unquote law. But the fact of the matter is that it's not going to pass in the Senate based on the votes that they think they have. And the other piece to this is, like, who's to determine what the market value is? Because generally speaking, if you're talking about a free market, it's just what someone's willing to pay. And if someone's willing to pay $6 million for you to play edge rusher, then that's what the market dictates. Because this school was willing to pay you $4 million, and this one was going to pay you $5 million, but they paid you $6 million, and there's the market, and I'm taking $6 million. And I just have a hard time believing that you're going to be able to litigate that out of collegiate athletics now that it's been litigated into collegiate athletics. That's my thing. Like, I know we've got the clearinghouse with Deloitte, and you're supposed to clear every single NIL deal that's over $600, and the word is that those are taking forever now, that we were assured in writing, like, yeah, we'll get those turned around in a matter of hours and perhaps just a day. Well, they're waiting 10, 20, 25 days now before things are getting clarified. And so the people that I'm reading are writing that schools are just saying, to heck with it. We're not going to wait for this to get cleared. Here's your money. It's a mess. It is a mess because no one can determine what's legal and what's the way we're going to do this. And most of all, who's in charge? And it just doesn't feel like anyone has stepped to the forefront. There's outlines of plans and there are ideas, and there are some people that more are outspoken than others. But to me, as I look at this, once you determined, and the Supreme Court determined, that you can't say someone cannot capitalize on their name, image, and likeness for financial gain, and once we crossed that Rubicon into this world that we're in, trying to limit how much money someone can make is going to be nearly impossible when it comes to the letter of the law. Because no one cares how much Nike pays an NBA player. No one cares how much Nike pays a golfer. No one cares how much Viore pays Livy Dunn. Because those are out of the sport endorsement deals based on what the company wants to do. And to try to take collegiate athletes and say, well, these are amateurs and those are pros, so we're going to let the pros do that, but we're going to keep these amateurs. Well, they're not amateurs anymore. They're getting paid. Collectively bargained money that is brought in from revenue from the schools that's going to the athletes. These are employees. So to tell them that they can't go to a business and earn money, like, I don't care if you think it's the best thing for college sports or not. That part doesn't matter. What matters is that the court system in the United States of America is not going to let you say, no, you can't make $1.5 million. You can only make $100,000. That's not how our system works. At least not my understanding of it. And trust me, I'm not trying to be the smartest guy in the room here. I'm not trying to tell you I have a perfect solution. But based on everything that I'm reading, every time you try to limit financially what a student athlete can make, the court is going to look at you and go, no, no, no. They can do whatever they want. The only way to limit the money that someone makes in the sport is a salary cap, which is collectively bargained by a players' association and an ownership group. And that is just on the salary perspective for playing the sport. In terms of recruiting and endorsements, I just don't have a great path to cutting that money out. I don't. So, when I see the idea that, well, we'll do revenue share and then we'll make sure that every marketing deal is fair and not just pay for play, it sounds good. It sounds like you've got it under control, but the court's not going to let you do it. If you are someone in a public space and a business owner decides they're going to pay you, they can. And I just don't think that Pandora is going back in the box, to me. Again, if something gets passed into law and there are rules that get put into place that are enforceable and that the courts can't touch, I'll come back and say, oh, I never thought of that. I was dead wrong. I have no problem doing that. But I feel pretty strongly about this. You look at what the attorneys in this matter say and not the coaches and the athletic directors. They're the ones that have the knowledge of how this whole thing works outside of college sports, just in our society, in our legal system. You can't just work around that for SEC football. Not now. You did it for a long time. Not now. I see the executive order. I see the champions for it from coaching and athletic directors and conference commissioners. I just don't think it holds up. And I think that it'll get struck down by the courts. There are going to be lawsuits aplenty based on all these happenings over the last 12 months. You know that my thing on this is always, okay, well, how does it affect LSU? I think a wild, wild west is not completely advantageous for LSU. I think there are plenty of schools that will have a sizable advantage over LSU in the wild, wild west. That said, LSU didn't have trouble paying a coach $100 million while they were buying out another one. And they didn't have trouble signing the top portal class in the country in football. And they haven't had trouble buying out a defensive staff 2 years ago. They seem to find the money when they need it. That's best I can tell. So that's my thoughts on Donald Trump's executive order. One LSU Tiger, former Tiger, is headed elsewhere at the trade deadline. One former Tiger just penned a goodbye letter. We'll tell you about both of those guys when we come back to close out hour number one.
The Hunt Palmer Show. You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Quirks, Cajun fried fish and shrimp.
Finishing up hour number one here. Corks brings you our Friday shows each and every week. Two LSU Tigers have posted on social media their kind of goodbye letter to LSU. I saw Jared Jones's right before the show went live. He'll obviously sign after going in the fifth round to the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was up in Pittsburgh yesterday at PNC Park. Taking some pictures there. Kate Anderson also had a goodbye letter. Not a shock. The third pick in the draft is decided to sign for whatever it is, $8 million. But Jared Jones, to me, just a great story. Comes in to LSU, kind of earns a role in the lineup on a championship team. Has that role reduced significantly when LSU decided they were going to go back to Trey Morgan at first, and that Dugas was going to play second, and they wanted to have Pearson in the lineup every day, and Joe Bear was coming on, and he needed to play, and there just wasn't a spot for Jared Jones. Travinsky came on as a DH and caught a little bit when Milazzo was dinged. But Jones didn't pout or anything. He just watched, observed, came back, hit 28 home runs the following year, and could have gone pro after that. I mean, just a prodigious power hitter in his second season, and decided, hey, I'm gonna come back and be a key piece to a team that makes it to Omaha. Like, that's what he said he wanted to do it, and he meant it. And he came back and he was a monster piece of a team that went to Omaha, and he was a monster piece of LSU winning the national championship. He'll have his moment forever, which will always be the walk-off hit against Arkansas. Of course, he had the big home run in the 8th inning that tied it a little bit earlier, but that got lost because there was a double play ball that was thrown his way and error on him to allow the go-ahead run to score. And so we forget about the home run he hit to right center field to tie the game, but it was a huge play. And he redeemed himself with the error at first base with a huge swing off Jimenez to win that game and send LSU to the championship series. And I think a lot of people have asked me about, his draft position, how Fry was an earlier pick and it took Jones longer to go. And I was like, look, I think Ethan Fry has a little bit more versatility than Jared. He runs better and he can play a couple outfield positions, which Jared's not going to do. And there are reasons for that. But Jared Jones has one awesome tool. He's a monster power hitter, and he can certainly drive the ball to the opposite field with a ton of authority, which is not something that a lot of guys can do. So I'm hopeful that Jared makes it up the ladder with Pittsburgh and finds his way to the big league club. If he does, that's phenomenal. If he doesn't, he's still legendary here in Baton Rouge for what he did. And it's a blessing that it is a curse that you have to win here to get the recognition that everyone else gets. Like if you just go to Omaha and go 2 and out, if you don't get to Omaha and you need to get to that level, it just feels like you gotta win a championship. Like I know that Alex Bregman didn't win a championship here, and he's still revered and should be. But it's few and far between. Kevin Gosman never got to Omaha, and I don't think that's completely tarnished his legacy. But the greats here in Baton Rouge have won championships, and Jared Jones has 2 to his name. He didn't feel like he was a big piece to the first one, even though he really was. He was a huge piece to the second one, and can always have that in his back pocket as he moves on into professional baseball. The other I wanted to mention, Griffin Herring has been traded today. The trade deadline's coming up next week. And Griffin Herring, who was drafted by the Yankees, signed well above slot, has really thrown the ball well in his first full professional season. He's been moved to the Rockies now. So that's not the best organization in terms of pitching over the years, and certainly the elements have a lot to do with that. But Griffin Herring's had a great start to his career. The Rockies have kind of a profile they look for in pitching that they think works in Coors Field, and it's difficult to do. They haven't cracked that code just yet. But Griffin Herring is now a piece of their plans. Of course, they have Jaden Hill there as well, who made his big league debut earlier this year. A couple former Tigers that are top prospects now in the Rockies organization. So it's good. It's tough to be traded, I think, but to know that someone covets you, like the Rockies had an eye on the entire Yankee organization and picked Griffin Herring and one other prospect that they wanted in return in this deal. So very cool that somebody pegged Griffin in that way, that they want to bring him in and be part of the organization. So Jared Jones, Kate Anderson penning their goodbye letters via social media to LSU, and Griffin Herring on the move from the Yankees organization to the Colorado Rockies organization, which, may be easy to break through. Well, I shouldn't say easy. That's a really poor choice of words. Should be a little bit cleaner a path to the big leagues if you're talking about a Rockies team that could set an MLB record for futility this year. They are not good. So you can move through that system maybe a little bit more quickly, and maybe Griffin gets that opportunity. So our Friday show is brought to you by Corks Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp. Check out the menu, corksfishandshrimp.com. If you missed any of the first hour, catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, certainly on YouTube as well. Open the show with Noah Fant. He's the guy the Saints are looking into. Does it make sense to bring him in? I gave my thoughts on that. The veteran tight end. Preston Guy talking some LSU offensive line with us at 1:15. Appreciate him for jumping aboard. You can find that at Hunt on LSU. And Donald Trump signing an executive order about college sports. I talked about that a little bit. To the best of my ability and knowledge at 1:30. Second hour, going to be fast moving. We're going to start with LSU and their wide receivers. We heard a big piece on LouisianaSports.net about it. It's a loaded group. I'm going to talk about it coming back. And Keith Hornsby in 35 minutes, new to the LSU staff, certainly not new to LSU basketball. We'll do that coming up in 35 minutes from now. Pause for Sports Center. Back with more on The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.